family has its challenges and business has its challenges, and then you mix the two, and you get a lot of conflict sometimes, but you also get a lot of passion. And so with what my grandfather did to start our company, immigrating from Germany, and then my father taking it over, I've pretty much always been around making chips, the chip making industry, manufacturing machine tools. So I don't really know life outside of it. I think there's kind of that smirk that people get when they talk about family business, because everyone kind of knows you don't really get a chance to turn it off. But when you think about some of the benefits to everyone in the family sharing that passion to grow the business, there's a lot of things about family business that I really value. There's not a lot of red tape. You can say what you feel a lot more than you could in some big corporate environment. And it seems like things can move a little bit faster in a family business. But of course, you can't turn it off. So you end up talking about work on vacation. You end up getting yelled at by your mom. Hey, it's dinner time. Stop. Turn it off. And so you got to do your best to try to keep that balance the best you can. I think about just how impressive it was for my grandfather, what he went through with the war, and before he came over. It's just really inspiring, and I don't have anything in my life that even compares to kind of the challenges that he had to overcome. And then he has the ultimate entrepreneurial spirit, and so, but he was one of those guys who had 1,000 ideas. And some of them weren't the best. Some of them were awesome. What my dad was able to do is really focus on business and okay, how do we make the great ideas successful, and how do we limit the impact of some of the ideas that might be a distraction or a rabbit trail? So we went from being kind of a small, really entrepreneurial style engineering and design and build company to more of a global enterprise with my father's generation. And now with me and my brothers and my cousins taking over, it's how do we continue that growth? And I feel like it gets harder to do that every generation. But there's no space in our family for nepotism. You have to earn every opportunity that you get. And my father always says, your last name might get you a job, but it won't keep you a job. And so we take that very seriously, and we want to perform, and we don't want to ask anything ask anything of our employees that we wouldn't be willing to do ourselves. Yeah. So really good question about kind of the unique position I'm in to have this opportunity with this marketing, media, manufacturing hybrid business in making chips. I mentioned the family business, and growing up, I was an artist. I did paintings. I was the furthest thing from an engineer. I wasn't mechanically inclined. You did not want me taking an engine apart and putting it back together. And that's how most of the manufacturing guys I know kind of got their start. They were real craftsmen in that capacity. Well, my craft was more on the fine art side, and I honestly felt a little bit out of place. Where do I belong in this family business? Because I sucked at math. I wasn't an engineer, and I just felt like that's all that this manufacturing family business had to offer. So I honestly grew up thinking I probably wouldn't work for the family business. And my mother really emphasized, hey, we're not going to force the kids into it. So I had a couple other jobs. I did grow up working in our shop, but I had a couple other jobs after that, and got into bartending and serving, and I tried a lot of different things. And I ended up falling in love with my wife, who, worked at the restaurant I worked at, and I was getting a little bit more serious. And I was like, hey, Dad, I think I want to propose to this girl. Do you think there's a place for me in the company? Because I'm not going to be able to do it on bartending wages. And he's like, I always thought that you'd be really strong in marketing. And I was like, yeah, I think I could do that. There seems to be a lot of creativity in marketing. So that's really where it started. I ended up changing how I was going to school and focused less on the fine arts and more on the business side of marketing. And I just fell in love with it. Just the idea of being able to communicate a value proposition in a creative and unique way. And specifically, I fell in love with content marketing. When people make content that has inherent value, it's valuable because the content is valuable, not because of the product behind it. And, when content marketing is great, the content is the product. And there wasn't a lot of examples in the manufacturing industry of people who really got that right. But one day I was trying to learn more about the business when I was mowing my yard, and I searched machining podcast or something in my Apple podcast player, and the Making Chips podcast popped up, and learned a little bit about Jason and Jim, and learned a lot about the industry just from listening to them and the guests that they brought on. And I was just like, these guys are getting it. Everything I read about content marketing, these guys are doing it. And I don't even think they realize they're doing it. And so I ended up sending them a really cool video that we made about the identity of our company and the history of our family. And they really liked it, and they wanted me to be a guest. And, after I was a guest on the show, we built a relationship, and I started talking to them more about like how much I saw opportunity in their business. And they talked a lot about, I know this thing blew up. We never thought it would be the number one manufacturing podcast. And they had limited capacity because they were running manufacturing businesses. And I always had this vision of like, hey, what if we could take the marketing department of the company and make it something that could generate its own profit, make it its own business unit. And so after a long time of going back and forth and strategizing with these guys, we decided that we could really help each other. I had 5 guys and girls working for me in my marketing group at AME and Hennig, and they had this platform, this audience of manufacturing leaders, and they had a brand. And so I was like, maybe we can turn this into kind of a joint venture business. And, I guess the rest is history. That was like 2018, December of 2018, when we did what we call Making Chips 2.0. And so far, so good. We've been able to consistently expand the team and expand what we're able to deliver to our audience at Making Chips. As we expanded what we're able to deliver to our audience at Making Chips, I think the thing that was most valuable to me was I get probably more value out of the guests and what they can contribute than even our audience does. I learn so much from every guest that we bring in, and the ability of just a couple guys who aren't media professionals to launch a podcast, and I pick it up when I'm on my mower, and I build a relationship with them, and that expands into a network where I now know so many people I didn't know, and these folks can help me with specific challenges that I'm having in my career. I benefit from that, and that's the exact same thing that our audience benefits from. And for every one of me that found Making Chips and found a ton of value in it, there's 1,000 other guys, and I think that's what's pretty cool about it. Everywhere I go, and I'm in sales, so I'm head of sales for the business, and I'm on the road about a third of the year. And everywhere I go, every customer seems to have the exact same primary challenge, and it's just finding people to grow their business with, finding skilled labor. It could be an engineer, it could be a machinist. So many opportunities in this industry go unfilled because, quite honestly, I think it's my generation and the one just above me, we didn't really think about manufacturing. I don't know very many of my friends that I grew up with who even know like what CNC machining is. They don't know the difference between a mill and a lathe. They don't understand how the car that they drive got built, the airplane that they flew in got manufactured. They just really don't seem to get it. And so, in many ways, the growth of our country is dependent on our ability to close that gap. And I think back to my own mindset when, I'm not an engineer, I'm not good at math, I'm not mechanically inclined. Why should I go into manufacturing? That was kind of my mindset. And I think there's a lot of folks who just have this picture painted in their mind of what this career would be like. And they don't understand there's opportunity for every single type of person, every single skill set, every single strength, every single culture, every single gender. It's any person with any sort of drive can find success in this industry. Not everyone's going to be a machinist. Not everyone's going to be an engineer, but this is a massive, massive industry. And so there really is opportunity. And I guess the challenge to the manufacturing community, the leaders that we talk to on our podcast, is paint a different picture for these folks. And the challenge for these younger people who are maybe considering what industry they want to get to is have an open mind and really think about some of the industries that maybe weren't right in front of you. You know, everyone wants to be a professional athlete. Everyone wants to be a musician. Everyone wants to, be the president or whatever it might be. Really think about it. What are you great at? Where can you add value? And explore opportunities in the manufacturing industry because they're there. So one of the big changes, the probably most obvious change after the COVID-19 pandemic, is a lot of manufacturers were able to start considering what it looks like to work remotely. And a lot of them were just forced to actually do that. And then after it happened and people were working remote, there was more and more, hey, this isn't that bad. And in fact, it saves us money. We don't need as much space. Now, I'm not one of those like, oh, let's all work remote type folks. I think there's no substitute for being in the same room with the people you're collaborating with. But when I think about just like even the sales job, I think about what it used to be like for an application engineer. He had to fly to all these customers to like literally go through in front of the machine exactly how the process is going to work. And with screen sharing and Zoom and all these new digital technologies, that so much of that process can be handled kind of just over the internet with some of these tools. So I think that those two things, the remote working and then the technology, are probably the things that are going to stick the most. But I would caution companies who think like, okay, let's swing it all into just let's go totally remote. I don't even need a sales team anymore. I don't need to shake hands or have lunch with a customer. I would think of it like this. Would you enter a relationship with your girlfriend where everything was just Zoom? And think about how much harder a long distance relationship is than one where you could really, go hang out together, go have dinner together, share that experience in person with them. And I think the same can be said about like sales and business relationships, that there's more ability to do this than ever before, but that doesn't mean that it should be a pure substitute for, human to human interaction. If I think about what guides me in life, a big part of it for me is my faith. So just when you don't put all the pressure on yourself, and when it's not all about you and it's more about, what you can contribute beyond yourself, it helps you to add more value to everybody around you. So what I'm getting at with that is this industry is one where there's so much to learn, and it's so difficult to become an expert in all the different aspects of the industry that you can get kind of hunkered down with something called imposter syndrome, where even if you are smart, even if you do know a lot, even if you're a great engineer, a great photographer, a great machinist, you always feel like, well, there's someone out there who knows more. And it kind of makes you afraid to even speak up and share the value that you have because you feel like an imposter when you're really not. And so I learned a little bit about imposter syndrome with what my grandfather was able to do, what my father was able to do, and now it's passed down to us. I just felt like I had this massive mountain to climb to kind of keep that progress and to keep that success going. And I never really felt like I was good enough, like I could do it. And as I mentioned, I always felt like I was kind of out of place because my skill set wasn't typical of what, manufacturers typically come from. So, then as I kind of grew up and matured, and really, found a stronger grasp on my identity in my Christian faith, I started to think about like, well, maybe I was made this way for a reason, and maybe I can, have like a secret sauce. Maybe the differences in me could be what makes me unique and valuable, and not like all these other folks who kind of came up with that more mechanically inclined background. And I stopped putting so much pressure on myself, and I started learning a lot more about things that the other manufacturers didn't know about. And I wanted to share more because I was passionate about it. And then they wanted to share more. And what's great is I actually know way more about how these parts are made, how these machines work, how fixtures work, how cutting tools work, how just the process of making a finished product with machining. Because I was sharing stuff, I was adding value that was new to them. They were sharing stuff, adding value that was new to me. And once I got over that imposter syndrome and being afraid to speak up, I was really able to grow. And so I would recommend that, if you're a young person in this industry, take the time to really get to know yourself and figure out where you have some unique strengths, and then just exploit those. So yeah, I think another thing to mention is that these associations like NTMA and these manufacturing programs are doing more, and they're doing things differently than what they have in the past, because everyone's trying to figure out how to solve the skills gap. So I just appreciate the opportunity to tell my story, and we're all passionate about solving this problem of all this growth opportunity without the human resources and the human capital to get it done. So kudos to the NTMA for putting this whole thing together.